Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku, and it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Our public schools are a place where all kids feel like they belong.
My children.
My family. My community.
All students. All students.
All students belong in a great public school.
Let's get ready for back to school at nea.org/backtoschool.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn and welcome to How We're the podcast from Local Report. And today we continue our top 10 series where we shamelessly steal the Match of the Day top 10 format and apply a Sunderland twist to it. And today we have set ourselves yet another tough one. And you can tell when we get into the ordering that it is a tough one because we've never seen a bigger spread of players, of choices on this one than we did with strikers and managers. So we will be ordering the top 10 Sunderland goalkeepers. But in the managers and strikers, we went back as far as we could based on the people involved. So let's just say we've slightly increased the average age today. So we are going back 35 years and we're going back to goalkeepers from 1990. So once again, I'm not alone to do this. I've got three very experienced gentlemen to help me. And our first guest could judge these players from his front row seat as part of the local media. And he's already helped us to create a Sunderland Promotion Best 11 since 1990. He's a good friend of the podcast, and we're very pleased to once again welcome Ian Murder. Hi, Ian.
Good to be back. Hello.
Yeah, thanks for being involved in this one. I mean, again, we talked about the promotion one, but, as fans, we talk about it being tough because we've got favourites. Is it tough because you knew a few of these?
Yes, absolutely. But you've made it slightly less tough. If imagine if this had gone back 50, 60 years when you'd not just Jimmy Montgomery, but you'd have had goalkeepers like Chris Turner and Barry Siddle. So by drawing a line around about 1990, you've made it ever so slightly easier.
Well, unfortunately, Mig and Andrew are young whippersnappers, and that's about as we go back. So I do apologise. I'd love to be able to talk about, and I saw Chris Turner later on for Sheffield Wednesday, but I couldn't comment on him for Sunderland. So unfortunately, you're going to have to put up with us young'uns that go back to 1990, unfortunately, Ian. But yeah, it is. But I'm looking forward to getting into it. And actually, well, I've already kind of given away a little bit because next up we have someone who's been part of the previous two top 10 podcasts and has been involved in a number of books written about Sunderland FC and is part of our On This Week team as well. It is Andrew Smithson. All right, Andrew?
Well, I was going to say I'm okay, but I'm not sure about being a young'un, Chris. I've currently got a bad back, which is not, that's hardly what a young person has to deal with.
Andrew, I don't normally say currently. I'll say I've always got a bad back. Never mind currently. There's no current situation. I mean, you did the managers and strikers. Was keepers more difficult? How did you find this one compared to the other two?
I would say it was a lot more difficult, if truth be told. I found a lot of them, Chris. There was very fine margins between some of the positions, and also
you're already giving yourself a get-out clause, aren't you? Here, by the way,
well, it's my usual caveat corner, isn't it? To cover my back. But no, I thought it was very difficult, and I feel for a lot of the keepers who didn't even make the top 10. I think a lot of them had a decent shout. So yeah, hopefully there'll be a few different opinions flying around. Try and get to the bottom of it all.
Yeah, there's Smithson covering himself again. Well done, good start, mate. It's start as you continue. Want to go on?
I know the drill now, Chris. I know how it works.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the Lee Johnson's still getting talked about on pods, mate.
I don't know how.
We'll see what comes out of this one. Because also joining us is a recognisable voice again from our On This Week series. His stories and descriptions of players from yesteryear are becoming famous. It is, of course, Calvin Beattie. Hello, Calvin.
Morning, chaps. How are we all this morning?
Yeah, good, thanks. And apologies, Calvin. We've just been talking about it. We are just going back to 1990. I apologise for that. You were just a young whippersnapper in your 50s back then, weren't you, Calvin?
Yeah.
I do apologise. But I mean, it probably goes. I mean, without giving anything of your top 10 away, Calvin, I imagine Monty would be up there if we were going way back.
Ian's just mentioned the three that I would definitely have thrown in there. Additionally, is Monty, Chris Turner, and Barry Seedle.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we'll see if we can wangle a longer one back, and I'll just have to listen to all you guys talk about some of the older ones. Anyway, well, let's crack on because, as I said, we're shamelessly stealing that BBC Match of the Day top 10 format. So anyone not familiar, we pick a subject to rank, which in this case is the top 10 Sunderland AFC goalkeepers since 1990, so the last 35 years. First, we had to shorten the list down to 10, which we've done previously. Before today's pod, which we'll talk about the choices on there first. And then in today's pod, we are going to put those 10 into order from best to worst. Well, again, why since 1990? Just to reiterate, well, again, it just makes it more effective if we've actually experienced seeing the players in action, and it also keeps things a bit simple. So let's get into it. So in terms of our 10 that have been selected for us to discuss today in alphabetical order, we've got Anthony Patterson, Craig Gordon, Jordan Pickford, Lionel Perez, Mart Poom, Shay Given, Simon Mignolet, Thomas Sorensen, Tony Norman, and Vito Minone. And just some of those to miss out. I might have missed some off these lists that the lads might pull me up on, but we've got the likes of Alec Chamberlain, Martin Fulop, Jurgen Macho, John McLaughlin, Thomas Myra, Kieran Westwood, and Darren Ward are just a few of those to miss out. So, I mean, we'll start with you, Ian, in terms of our shortlist that we came up with. I mean, obviously, without giving anything away for your order, I mean, was there any honourable mentions to anybody who was unlucky to miss out maybe on our top 10?
Certainly, out of the names that you just mentioned, none of them would have featured in the top 8. One or two, possibly unlucky not to grab 10th place or 9th place even. Thomas Myra, maybe, and Martin Fulop. But Alec Chamberlain, possibly as well. If there'd been a top 13, I guess what I'm trying to say is those three would have occupied the last 3 places.
Yeah, it's funny with Alec Chamberlain, though, Ian, isn't it? Because he seemed to gather a bit of momentum in his later years, didn't he?
Yes, he did. I can remember, of course, he was one of the Terry Butcher famous 5 when Bob Murray decided to splash the cash that season. And, Tony Norman by then was in the veteran stage and he did well. Peter Reid never really fancied him. And of course, I think Alec Chamberlain was pretty stung when Shay Given, who's going to feature later on in this conversation, came in on loan from Blackburn and immediately ousted him. And although Alec Chamberlain got back in the side due to Shay Given's injury later in that 95-96 season. Was it 95-6? Yes, it was.
Yes, it was, yep.
And, I think he carried the mental scars from what had happened and he knew he wasn't the manager's favourite.
Yeah, it was the Cantona goal, wasn't it? Was it Cantona goal, the header, where he didn't come out for the free kick later on at Old Trafford?
Yeah.
And I think that was pretty much the final straw. And actually, just talking about the famous 5, I'm pretty sure he was, from memory, he was the only one sensible enough not to get a lift back from Derek Ferguson.
I think you're right. Although after the 5-0 defeat at Derby in the opening game, the season that he probably wished he had.
He probably felt like he had after those 5 goals went into the baseball ground. But yeah, I mean, Andrew, again, looking at those few that have missed out, you might think of some more. I'm not sure, but one of those that Ian mentioned is Thomas Myra, who actually I think a lot of people forget he played in that promotion season.
He did. You're right. Myra at the time, we had him on the books. We had Poom on the books. I think we had Sorensen on the books all at the same time. We had 3 quality goalkeepers. So yeah, perhaps that's why Myra isn't as well remembered. but he was a big part of that promotion team. And I think, like a lot of these goalkeepers, you would just say he was solid. That's what you want from a goalkeeper. You don't want flash. You don't want memorable even. You just want a keeper who comes in, does a job. You pick him, he plays, and you don't need to give him a second thought. You know, he'll give you a decent performance. So yeah, Myra, I thought, well, he was solid, and he could have easily featured in this top 10 for me.
Yeah, and I think Kelvin, I think we've touched on it a couple of times, but actually, I think at the bottom end, maybe it wouldn't have taken much to pull one of the ones from the bottom out and put another one in, and maybe another kind of mention in terms of a promotion goalkeeper, because I know Gav was potentially saying Darren Ward should maybe part of the top 10. I mean, who was maybe the best of the rest for you?
I always liked Kieran Westwood, and I felt like when I thought about, because my brother, who I go with, he really liked Myra, but I was living up in Scotland and wasn't getting to every home game, so I didn't see him play as much. Whereas, whatever the reason for it, I did seem to see Kieran Westwood play a bit, and I thought he was just what Andrew described. He was a sensible, good custodian of the goal, kind of. He would have made probably number 10 for me if he'd been offered up as an option.
Yeah.
Based on what I saw with my own eyes.
Yeah. Well, see, that's why we pick that. You see, because maybe Andrew wouldn't have been able to. But just on Westwood, Ian, did you cover him for Ireland when you covered the Irish time?
Yes, and he's probably one of those players whose best form wasn't at the Stadium of Light. It was probably with Ireland and elsewhere at club level. And he had injury problems, I think, at Sunderland as well. I think when he joined the club, it was a case of that's a good signing. When he left, he'd sort of almost fallen down the pecking order, hadn't he? So I don't think his impact at Sunderland was tremendous.
Yeah. Well, look, let's get into it, because there's genuinely a lot to talk about it, because, like I said, we haven't had a list like this that have had players jumping. I mean, I'm just trying to look at the player who potentially has jumped the most places. We've got a player who's in 8th position for one and in 2nd place for another. And we've got little things like that all over the place. So there's a lot to talk about. So let's get into our top 10s. And if we could start with you, Ian, if you wouldn't mind giving us your countdown from 10 up to 6, please.
10 up to 6 in true match of the day style.
That's it, yeah. And top of the pops.
Right. In 10th place is Manoni. In 9th place is Perez. 8th place, Minile. 7th place, Poon. 6th place, Patterson.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the other lads trying to gauge where everyone is on their list. It's going to be interesting. So let's start with bottom of the pile for you, Ian. You've got Vito Manone, and you're the only one to have him there. And we'll get into where Andrew and Calvin have got him in a moment. He made something like 80 appearances for Sunderland, and obviously the big one, he has got a big moment, because as we said, I think Andrew touched on it, there's a lot of these keepers who were solid and maybe didn't have a big moment. Vito Manone's got that moment in terms of saving the penalty to claim a place in the major final, but you didn't rate him above any of the others in our list.
No, and chief criteria is I want the goalkeeper to be safe. I never felt that Manoni, for all his moments, as he quite correctly mentioned, notably at Old Trafford in the League Cup, whenever a cross came in or a shot, I thought he had a mistake in him. It's a very personal opinion. He wasn't a bad keeper, hence the fact he does make the top 10. But yeah, he wasn't particularly big, so he wasn't particularly commanding. And as I said, I remember, of course, his boob at Manchester City when Conor Wickham got the goals, and cost Sunderland a shock 3 points, although I think 2-2 draw. Was it 2-2 or 3-3? In the Poyet Great Escape. But anyway, that could have been crucial. In the end, it wasn't. And I am aware he was popular with Sunderland fans, but yeah, it was just, he wasn't a reassuring presence between the posts for me.
Yeah. And Andrew, I'll let you do your rundown from 10 to 6, please, and we'll find out where you've got Mannone.
Yeah, sure. So 10 was Lionel Perez, 9 was where I put Mannone, 8 was Simon Mignolet, 7 I had Craig Gordon, and for number 6 I went with Mart Poom.
Okay, so you've got Mannone in 9th, and just quickly, Ian was talking about not having that moment in him either way, almost, where he pulled off the important save from a penalty, but as a lot of keepers do, actually, he had that moment where you thought actually he could have a wobble.
He did. I seem to remember, I think the week after we got beat by Southampton 8-0, I think he had a dodgy goal. I think we lose 2 or 3-0 at home the week after to somebody decent like Arsenal? Or you're definitely right. I can't think of a couple of moments where he's had errors in him. Had he been able to cut those out, he might have been higher up on the list. But I liked Mannone as a player and as a person. He was a good fella, and I think we can all agree had he stayed around after Premier League relegation, Sunderland probably wouldn't have been in that Championship relegation battle that they were in. I think we lost him in the summer. He went to Reading, and there was a lot of I think a lot of people were unhappy with that decision. I think they felt it was very short-sighted getting rid of him when we did.
Yeah. And I mean, just before we come into Calvin's bottom 5, quickly, because Ian had Lionel Perez at 9th. You had him bottom of the pile, Andrew. And I'd say, actually, thinking back, I think he actually did a decent job in the Premier League, taking over from Tony Coton, because he probably didn't expect to play. He was probably told he wasn't going to play. He was going to sit on the bench all season. And then after that, he did play his part in getting us to the playoff final. I remember an unbelievable double save in the playoff against Sheffield United at the Stadium of Light. That people just think we completely ran over Sheffield United in that second leg, but they could have pulled it back later on if it wasn't for that double save. There's obviously the rush of blood at Wembley, but what marks him down for you over everyone else?
Sadly, it was that Wembley issue, and just because it was such a high-profile error. I mean, you'll probably remember, Chris, from a previous pod, I insisted my parents called our cat Perez. So there was a time, like you say, in the Premier League, I thought he was very good for us.
The cat kept jumping too early, did he?
Yeah. He was he was a bit of a bargain buy. Like you say, he was perhaps expected to be kind of cover for Tony Coton, and he did well. He did well in that first season at the Stadium of Light. I mean, he used to walk around with his bleached blonde hair and his sleeves rolled up with it, with the big guns popping out of the sleeves and that. So he was memorable and he caught the eye. I just think, Wembley was probably the worst place to have your worst performance in a Sunderland shirt. Yeah. Bless him.
Just before I bring you in, Calvin, Ian, just memories of Lionel Perez, because I always got the feeling that Peter Reid felt almost forced to have him as a goalkeeper for a long time, and he never really fancied him. I remember him bringing Chris Woods in towards the end of that season, and as soon as he came in, I was fully expecting Chris Woods to go in goal. And then obviously there was the controversy when he left. He actually signed for Newcastle United on a free, but never got a break at Newcastle. Kind of sat on the bench there as what he was probably expecting to do at Sunderland.
I'll tell you a story, actually. I can remember he made his debut, I think it was at Southampton, when Tony Coton suffered a terrible injury. Now, it was one of those rare occasions where the press travelled on the plane with the team. And I can remember on the way back, my seat was next to him, and he just made his debut. And Tony Coton, poor man, I think the stretcher was actually on the floor in the aisle, strapped in. And I remember talking to him. He's very, very personable. He didn't look like a goalkeeper, did he? He almost looked like a rock star. and I think he smoked as well. I might be wrong there. And then, of course, he dyed his hair blonde, so he looked flamboyant, and I guess you'd say his goalkeeper was quite flamboyant as well.
Yeah.
Or frenzied, maybe another word for his goalkeeping.
Yeah. Just, I mean, I remember how surprised were you at that move for Newcastle, Ian? Because I imagine you covered it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say he is certainly, if there was a top 10 of most irrelevant signings, he'd be pretty high up in Newcastle's most irrelevant. I don't think he made an appearance for them. It was surprising, but by the time he joined Newcastle, a little bit like Kieran Westwood, his time at Sunderland, everyone knew was up. It was just where he went was the surprise.
Yeah.
I think going against Perez as well was the fact that he conceded one of the most famous goals ever. That Cantona chip where he then turns round and he pops his collar. So perhaps for a lot of people, their memory of Perez is getting beaten all ends up, and it's regularly shown on TV, that goal. So that maybe plants a seed in people's minds that was he a bit weak perhaps on certain areas.
The French connection.
Well, I always thought his hair might be getting in his face and in his way when he was in goal. But it's funny because the little memories like that, Andrew, obviously that's quite a big one. But I remember being in the away end, right about 5 yards behind the goal at Stockport County in the away end, which was just a little terrace behind the goal.
Yeah.
And Lionel Perez, it was a 1-1 draw. Lee Clark scored in the last minute. And I ended up being a little bit naughty and ended up on the pitch, hobbling around because I had a torn hamstring at the time. But anyway, that's a different story. But but Lionel Perez was in goal right in front of me in that second half. And actually, close up, I've never seen, because I'm not sure I've been that close up at a professional game as I was then. He made some unbelievable saves because I was only 5 yards away from it. They looked probably better than they were. Some were right down at the post, and I just thought, actually, because you don't really know, but at that point I thought, actually, he's not a bad keeper. But anyway, we'll move on because Kelvin, we need your countdown from 10 to 6, please.
Number 10, Perez. Number 9, Shea Given. 8, Poom. 7, Pickford. And 6, Manoni.
Yeah, because there's a lot of raised eyebrows now because you're starting to get an idea of how you've mixed them all up, basically. Just to quickly start, Calvin, before we go on to some of the others. Vito Manoni, you've got him in his highest position of 6th. The other two have got him in their bottom 2. What had him so high up the leaderboard for you?
So a couple of things, really. Obviously, his moment at Man United with the penalties was a big, big moment. He was Supporters Player of the Year in 2014. He was popular with the crowd. He was flashy, I thought, bit of a, he liked to have a bit of engagement with the crowd when he was playing. I saw him play quite a bit. He was I just watching him close up, I sort of had an experience. I was struggling to remember what game it was. It was an away game, and I was quite close to him, a bit like you at Stockport. And what struck me, having seen lots and lots of keepers, his engagement with his teammate was really caught me that day. He was sort of a mix of encouraging, threatening. He was a mix of all that. So I thought he's possibly a good communicator, although there seemed to be an awful lot of it. So he's just somebody that caught my eye. Some good saves. If I had a criticism of him, and I would say this about Perez as well, his positioning sometimes meant that some of those saves that he was making for me were because he wasn't getting his position right, and he was having to work harder than perhaps he should have. And I suppose that if you base that on watching Jimmy Montgomery a lot, watching Barry Siddle, watching Chris Turner, you're then watching Manoni, and he's like, he's 3 yards west of where he should be, you know, and you're like thinking, well, that was a great save, mate, but, you know, if you'd just been a little bit more switched on to the game, maybe, you know, so that would be a criticism of why he's at 6. But like, I agree with the comment. I thought we got rid of him too soon, and that was more to do with, really, we wouldn't have been saying that if a good replacement had come in for him. That there wasn't one. It was a hard year. The season after he left was a tough year, and I think that's why we missed him when he wasn't there. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, I was just looking, Calvin, because I think he played something like 35 games in his first season. But then after that, played 13 games, then 20 games, and then 11 games in the final season under David Moyes. But he never really nailed down a first team place. And someone we haven't mentioned actually came in. Costel Pantamon came in, didn't he?
I was just going to say that he had some competition, didn't he, with Pantilmon, and he wasn't a bad keeper, Pantilmon, but I would possibly say to you that I thought Manoni had the edge on him.
Chris, I thought Pantilimon wasn't in because none of us would be able to spell it.
Well, I did try and avoid saying it as much as, but in hindsight, you know, he maybe should have been mentioned above the likes of maybe Alex Chamberlain and maybe John McLaughlin in League.
Yeah, he was a good goalkeeper, and he was. I think wasn't he the tallest player in the Premier League at the time or something? He was
6'8", wasn't he?
Yeah, big fella.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And he played a few games for Man City as well. I think he played in a cup final and stuff for them before he left. If my memory's right, but yeah, Manone didn't really nail down, and then I think Westwood he had competition with as well at the time, and you know, we've already mentioned Kieran Westwood. Just quickly, Calvin, you also had Mark Poom in his lowest position in 8th. The others had him at 6th or 7th. Now it's funny, we're talking about moments. I remember him being a solid keeper, and I liked Mark Poom, but when I think about him, all I can think about is that header against Derby.
It was great, wasn't it? Fantastic. I think I don't know what the actual award was, but I'm sure it's been voted the best goal by a keeper ever, which was what moved him up a little bit for me. He didn't play many games in the Premiership, Poom. This was hair's breadth stuff. You know, he could have been a bit higher, he could have been a bit lower in my list. Boom, he was. There's nothing wrong with him as a goalkeeper, for sure. Steady pair of hands, I think when I think about him, I always think that if you were a forward, he filled the goal quite well. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that he was a big fat goalie. That's not what I'm saying. He just seemed to fill the goal quite well, was my memory of him. Good goalie, Mark Poom.
I think one of the reasons he filled the goal was he was a phenomenal trainer by all accounts. Really hit the gym, really focused, worked hard. You mentioned, Kelvin, you said there that Poom didn't play in the Premier League too much for us. I feel it was a bit like when we got rid of Manone and we ended up being relegated from the Championship. When we got rid of Poom, I think it was because he was on high wages. And that was the season we ended up with Kelvin Davies in goal. And again, I remember a lot of the talk at the time saying, we've got Poom on the books. We might have still had Myra on the books. Are we not better off just sticking with one of them?
Well, yeah, I remember that season because Mark Poom only played 11 games in the title-winning season. He played 52 games in the season we got into the playoffs. Yeah. And at the end of the season where we won the title, both Mark Poom's contract and Thomas Myra's contract was up.
Right.
And I think they were on big wages, and I think they probably could have gotten bigger wages elsewhere with the finances at Sunderland. And looking back at that signing of Mark Poom, Ian, it was a real strange one, I remember, because he was highly rated. He might have even been, and I might be mixing this up, but he might have even been on loan at Arsenal or somewhere like that, if memory serves me right. I might be wrong with the timings. But it was a real strange one because he was rated as one of the best in the Premier League. And it was actually Howard Wilkinson who spent over $3 million on him.
First, can I say that you might have only been number 7 on my list, but when on the all-time strikers list, you might have been number 2 or 3. that was a stunning goal at Pride Park, wasn't it?
Up there with Charlie Hurley in terms of getting up there. And
but yeah, you're right. I mean, when he came, he Howard Wilkinson didn't do a lot right in his short stay at Sunderland, but he was a good buy. And as you've touched on there, he was a rather mysterious sale. Clearly, what we realised in later on was Sunderland had financial problems, and they were getting rid of Big Ernest. I think he was given a pretty decent contract at Sunderland, and played well that season when Sunderland lost in the playoffs to Crystal Palace. But and the following season, maybe there was a clause in his contract that Sunderland would have had to pay a lot more had he played a certain number of games. We've had that with a few outfield players as well. I remember Emerson Tome was a classic example of that.
Yeah.
But he did a good job at Sunderland, and I agree with the view that he was an imposing figure. He looked almost like Iron Man, didn't he? And if people say goalkeepers don't like strikers bearing down on them, I'm sure that in one-on-one situations, there'd be 1 or 2 strikers who wouldn't have liked Mark Poom bearing down on them.
Yeah. Again, though, Ian, it is a sign, we've talked about this previously, and especially on the manager's top 10, but you're talking about a player here who, when we get promoted up to the Premier League, as we did in that title-winning season, he's still on too big a wage for us to on the books. And again, it just shows the job that Mick McCarthy did at that time.
Well, absolutely. Sunderland, in effect, that dreadful season in the top flight, Sunderland were paupers, and promotion didn't halt that downward spiral in terms of Sunderland's financial acumen.
I was just trying to think, and this one might be for Andrew. From memory, have any other goalkeepers scored in open play?
I don't believe so. Not for Sunderland. I remember a couple of seasons ago we conceded one at the stadium, didn't we? QPR. Late equaliser. But no, I think Poom's the only one to do it for Sunderland. It was I wasn't at that game. I listened to it on the radio, and wow, it was just brilliant.
Last minute.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was good old Simon Crabtree on commentary duty back then, and he just absolutely lost it. No, it was
the interesting thing though was that, I mean, obviously it was against his old club, but he just turned around like a machine and ran back to the
yeah.
Which I think said a lot about him. But yeah, well, look, let's get into some of our top fives. Ian, again, can we start with you and have your countdown from 5 up to your top of the pops, please?
All right. Yes, certainly can. I'll have to just call it up. And at number 5, I've got Tony Norman. At number 4, Shay Given. Number 3, Jordan Pickford. Number 2, Craig Gordon. And number 1, Thomas Sorensen. Now, numbers 2, 3, and 4, you could argue, are their respective countries' best goalkeepers of this millennium.
Mm.
Yeah.
Gordon, Pickford, Given. But also, they are legends at other clubs. Given, of course, with Newcastle. Pickford at Everton. Craig Gordon at Heart and the club I support, Celtic. So they would, they would have competed for top spot, but for the fact that you could argue that their best work was done elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And let's start off with one of them. Let's start off with Shay Given, because you've got him up there in 4th.
Yes.
I'm going to bring Kelvin in because Kelvin's got him 9th. And so we're going to bring Kelvin in a minute. Because look, despite it being a total of 17 games, look, it says something about the impact from a loan signing that we're still talking about his time at Sunderland 30 years down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we look at Shay Given, I mean, if I was doing a top 10 Newcastle goalkeepers, without a shadow of doubt, he would be number 1. If I was doing a list of Ireland goalkeepers, he would be number 1. If I was doing a list of...
He would be ahead of Pat Bonner.
He'd be ahead of Packy. Yeah.
Oh, that's an interesting one.
He probably would. Yes. I think he was a better keeper than Packy. Packy made tremendous saves. He was also prone to one or two gaffes as well. Again, if we were having a top 10 of all-time Premier League keepers, Shay Given would feature in that. That's how good he was. But of course, you've got to weight the argument when you're dealing on a Sunderland top 10 with the fact he did only play 17 games. And I think it is, to his enormous credit that he's featuring on this list quite high up, despite playing so few games for the club and none in the top flight.
Out of pure curiosity, Ian, if we're not basing this on just their time at Sunderland, if we're basing their careers as a goalkeeper, would that propel Shay Given to the top of this list?
I suspect he'd be number one, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But again, it shows because that time we talked about Alec Chamberlain, we talked about how he came out of the team, and actually it was a big shock. This unknown third of, I think he might have even been fourth choice at Blackburn Rovers, and this young kid comes in, and Peter Reid throws him straight into the side. I mean, Ian, when he first came to Sunderland, had you heard of him? Did you know this kid coming through?
I did, because of my Celtic connections. So, and he'd been a promising kid then. And of course, I think Packy Bonner was the number one at Parkhead at the time. I seem to remember I was covering Sunderland's, the game made its debut. It was a Sunday afternoon game at Leicester.
Yeah.
We heard there'd been rumours that he'd come into play regularly, but it was still a shock when you saw the team sheet that afternoon, and he was in ahead of Alec Chamberlain.
Yeah, and unsurprisingly, it was a 0-0 draw, because actually, to people talk about his impact, Ian, but actually, he wasn't kind of just stood there watching us kind of win every game after that. He had to make some important saves along the way, Ian.
He did, and arguably his finest game for Sunderland was his last game for Sunderland at Barnsley, when he got injured and made a string of wonderful saves then. A lot of people have always said that he wasn't that big, and it used to annoy him a little bit. And but I'm 188. He must have been 185. He was 6'1.5", so he wasn't small. But I can remember the day he joined Sunderland. He joined with another loanee. I don't know if any of you can remember who it was.
I want to say Terry Cook. Terry Cook.
That's a magnificent answer. Yeah, that's right. And Terry Cook had come from Manchester United. And at the time, I remember fans were probably more excited about this little winger who'd come in than this unknown goalkeeper.
Yeah, because actually, I'm sure Ben Thornley had gone to Huddersfield at the same time, and he was compared to Ben Thornley, and everyone went, "Oh, we've got a player here." I don't think he was half the player Ben Thornley was, unfortunately. Still decent.
Was Ben Thornley the one who got sent off on that famous game when Given was playing for us, Tony Norman was playing for Huddersfield, and I think Ben Thornley got sent off at half time because he launched the ball at the referee? I could be mixing my games up.
In the stats, he got a yellow card on 45 minutes and then a red card on 45 minutes. So it makes sense.
Yeah. So again, there's a link. You've got Given in goal at one end of the pitch, and you've got Tony Norman at the other end.
Yeah, and then obviously that was the day Michael Bridges kind of did his thing and scored those two late goals. But yeah, absolutely fantastic. Well, look, because we've waxed lyrical about Shay Given, it's about time we bring Kelvin in, because of course, talking about this spread, Kelvin had him down in ninth. I mean, was it just purely the amount of games, Kelvin, that pulled him down?
The amount of games I actually did see, I did see him play quite a bit for us. Absolutely agree with everything that you've said about him. He's a fantastic goalkeeper, for Ireland. I think he made his full debut for Ireland when he was on loan. To us, that's
right.
I wouldn't bet a month's wages, but I've got a memory of that. He was playing for the Ayr under-21 team, and then made his full debut when he was on loan. 12 clean sheets in those 17 games.
Unbelievable.
Really, really important stuff. Cracking goalkeeper. He wasn't what you would call slim, and I do think that because he was chunky, it did make him look smaller than what he actually was. No, he was one of these. He could have been at number 6 in my list. It was a hair's breadth kind of with a couple of these lads, but primarily it was the number of games that he played. Peter Reid really wanted him, didn't he? I think he tried to prize him away from Blackburn, tried to get him to come. He obviously absolutely rated him, and so did the fans. That's why we're still talking about him. He was so good when he came. I think
he knew that when Kenny Dalglish was the manager of Newcastle, because of Kenny's links with him at Blackburn, I think Peter was resigned to him joining Newcastle, not Sunderland.
Right. Yeah. I think that he went to Newcastle was a little black mark on my on my
Well, I didn't want to ask Calvin, but I just assumed, to be honest.
What's he doing going there?
Well, I mean, was it you mentioned that, Ian, because it was a bit of a saga, because it just seemed like Peter Reid. I remember every day in the local papers, it was like Peter Reid's added another million onto the price.
That's right,
and it never came. Was it really ever close that he was going to sign?
Do you know what? I might be wrong, but I don't recall it ever was. I think there was an inevitability about the fact that he would be going, not necessarily to Newcastle. I think there was a lot of talk whether Blackburn, who were, of course, at the time were one of the top teams in the land, might actually play him as a number 1 the following season. But I know you mentioned Calvin, a little black mark, but I think, there were very few players who transcend the tribalism of the region. But I think he does. And of course, latterly, he played a few games for Middlesbrough as well. He's one of the few, who had links with all 3 clubs. Stan Anderson's the most famous.
Absolutely.
But he's very much there as well.
Yeah.
If I remember rightly, I'm trying to think from memory, but I'm sure at Blackburn, I'm sure he had, I think it was Tim Flowers, Bobby Mims and John Phelan, I think.
Yeah. But I mean, that tells you, but I think even in the Northwest, there was genuine debate about whether they should sell Tim Flowers or whether he was even better than Tim Flowers, even at that in that tender age.
Yeah, and I remember Tim Flowers being an absolutely fantastic goalkeeper. Right, Andrew, could we have your countdown 5 up to your number 1, please?
Certainly. I had Shay Given at number 5, so there's a bit of a difference from the other gents there. Then number 4, Jordan Pickford. Number 3, Anthony Patterson. Number 2, Tony Norman. And number 1, Thomas Sorensen.
Right. Okay. Well, one of the biggest anomalies here was Craig Gordon, actually, because you've got, the others had Craig Gordon in their top 3. Ian was talking about being the kind of best goalkeeper for his country in his generation. You've got him down in 7th, and we've talked about keepers having moments where you see it in the flesh. And obviously there's that one against Bolton, which I don't think I've seen that bettered in my lifetime by a goalkeeper, where I was kind of stunned that the save actually happened. But he was unlucky with injuries, and I remember it started with that Jermaine Defoe incident. So, I mean, was it kind of his stop-start that had him down for you?
Exactly right. It was very sad how it ended. I don't disagree with what the other lads said. He was a quality goalkeeper. I think when we signed him, it was a really important show of intent. Roy Keane had worked with Clough and Ferguson, and they always thought it was vital to have a strong number 1 in goal. And Keane obviously saw that and saw Gordon as his man to do the job. He was a great goalkeeper for us. Just unfortunately for him, things didn't pan out. It was brilliant to see that at one point you thought his career was over, and since then he's gone on, resurrected his career, and in a few weeks' time, lads, we're all up to Scotland, aren't we, to play in his testimonial. So he brilliant goalkeeper for us. Just sadly, the injuries for me meant he was a little bit lower down compared to some of the options.
Yeah. I mean, Ian, I remember at the time it was a statement of intent from Roy Keane at the time signing him, wasn't it?
Massive.
Breaking that transfer record.
I remember my deputy sports editor at the time was a Hearts fan. And he said, my son had pulled off a coup in signing him. He said he is going to be outstanding. Now, that Bolton save that I think it was just before Christmas, wasn't it? Which you mentioned. Didn't that get voted the Premier League's greatest save of the first 20 years?
Yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, there's no doubt about his pedigree. I think a lot of us presumed that he was on the verge of having to hang up his boots because of the knee problem. And, the second coming's arguably been as high profile and as impressive as his first.
Yeah. And Kelvin, you've always got your scouts up north of the border. Did you hear about Craig Gordon before he signed?
I saw him play loads for the Jambos, saw him play a lot if I wasn't at Sunderland, I would be at Tynecastle watching football there. And
did you not, Kelvin? Did you not write your letter to Sunderland like you
I honestly, I couldn't believe we'd bought him. I thought I would say to you the day that we announced we'd bought him, there was a little whisper in the press up north of the border, and I thought, nah, that's paper talk. That where we agree with Andrew. What a statement! I thought he was the best goalkeeper in the world at that time. We were certainly buying him at what I thought was right at the top of his game. He's a fantastic goalkeeper. He had everything that you could wish for in a keeper, and I was absolutely delighted when he came. But injuries ravaged his time with us. He picked up a knee injury in I think his first full season with us, and and then that injury to his arm, the plate when he clashed with, was it his arm where he damaged in the clash with Defoe, which broke again in training. He had a terrible time with injuries. 2 years out of the game. Can there be a keeper that's gone 2 years out of the game, gone training with Rangers and Celtic, and resurrected his career? If you were basing this on more than just his time at Sunderland, I think he'd be really high up there with Shea Given. I think fantastic goalkeeper and leader. For his country, for the clubs that he plays with, he always seems to be an impressive individual. Craig Gordon, really liked him.
Well, that's it. It's interesting when you look at his games in terms of seasons. His first season, 35 games. Second season, 14 games. Third season, 30 games. And then his fourth season, 15 games. And then he had one game the season after that. And then it's incredible, though, like you said, he had, I think it was 6 years at Celtic after that. And I wonder that there's surely not many players, when you look at his first Scotland cap versus his last Scotland cap, that have had such a big gap in between. But it was a shame.
And I think he's picking them caps up now. I would argue, as a Scotland fan, he's not picking them caps up because there are no other keepers. Just to put that one to bed, I think there are some canny keepers that would cover the Scotland jersey, the goalkeeper's jersey. He's doing it because he's still pretty good. Obviously, he's lost a bit of time, and that's given him the extra edge to play on a while. But he's a really, really, really good goalkeeper, this lad. Really good.
Yeah. Well, Kelvin, we're on to your countdown, please. Can we have your 5 up to your top spot, please?
At number 5, Tony Norman. Number 4, Patterson. Number 3, Craig Gordon. Number 2, Mingele. And number 1, Tommy Sorensen.
Right. Well, here's the big standout, Kelvin, and I was waiting for this one because Simon Mignolet. The other two have got him at 8th. You've got him 2nd, tucked behind Thomas Sorensen. So, and I was looking, 101 games I think he had, and obviously signed as a young'un, a couple of million. I think he was almost like a prospect when we signed him. Yeah. But came straight in. So what had him kind of tucked in behind Thomas Sorensen above everyone else for you?
So he was like a Belgian chocolate on my tongue. Mingele, I again just thought I thought we got him at a good time. He some fantastic performances for us. Do you remember his save? I was at this game, from Adebayor in the 1-0 victory against Man City. What a blooming save that was! You know, I was one of them where I was driving back north over the border, going, "How the hell did he get to that?" You know, it was just a fantastic save. He was popular. He was popular with the press, wasn't he? He was voted Northeast Football Writer of the Year in 2012, and he got the supporters vote for Player of the Northeast Player of the Year. I think. Sunderland Player of the Year, didn't he? In that year, I thought he had a bit of everything. He was a canny shot stopper, not bad at crosses. You know, okay at the distribution. I just thought he was a really good goalkeeper. He's still doing business in Belgium, isn't he? Is he? I think he's still playing in Belgium and winning awards there. They have a divisional award, don't they? And he's, I'm sure when I looked, I can't remember this exactly, but 19, 20, 21, 22, 24. I think he was voted in their first division team of the year. So he's still playing. I'm not saying this was part of my criteria, but I think we bought him for $1 million and sold him for $9 million. You know, and you look at that. Well, that's good money as well. That's a good keeper that we've sold. Have we replaced him with a good one as well? Yes, we did. But 5 for me. I really enjoyed his. Of the 10 that you gave us, I thought for me he was a sort of a clear number 2 behind Tommy Sorensen. Yeah, really liked him as a keeper.
Yeah. Well, he was quite a big signing at the time, Ian. I think he was only about 22 or something when he joined, something around that age, and signed for a couple of million, and then ended up selling him for something like 9 million to Liverpool. But I always found that a really strange transfer, him going to Liverpool. I just couldn't see that working.
You know, listening to Calvin's eulogy there, it's made me actually question myself putting him at number 8. I wouldn't put up a strong argument if he finished in the top 5. I may be I'm guilty of looking at his Liverpool career as much as the Sunderland one, and he wasn't up. I think he had his best years probably at Sunderland. Also, I think he could be susceptible to a cross shot or an in-swinging centre coming in from the left. I think he was caught out on a number of occasions there. But yes, you're right. He was Northeast Football of the Year in 2012. And as I say, if in the final list he is in the top 5, then I certainly wouldn't complain.
Yeah, and Andrew's sitting there thinking he got away with it, but he had him down in 8th as well, Andrew. So did anything that Calvin said kind of persuade you to maybe question that?
Ian's right. Kelvin's put a really good case forward for him, and it's no comment on your scouting skill, Kelvin. He was a good all-round goalkeeper. I remember him. Didn't he have to play in a mask for a period? He got clattered one game. He was brave. You regardless of anything else, he was really brave, and that's a big thing for a goalkeeper. Didn't dislike him at all. He was a good goalkeeper. As has been mentioned, we sold him on for a lot of money to a big club. And how many players of that era could you say that about? Not many. So no problem with Mignolet at all. I thought he was a quality keeper for us. Just not as big a fan as Kelvin was by the sounds of it.
I'm trying to think. Did he save a Demba Ba penalty?
Oh yeah, that rings a bell.
I've got that in my mind somewhere.
He only saved 1 penalty out of 12.
Right.
I did start when I was struggling to order these. I thought I'll have to have a look at what the penalty situation was. He only saved 1 out of 12. And I think it was a penalty from Demba Ba.
I think it was.
The Man City game, Kelvin, you're talking
Yeah.
about, was that the one where he had to be brought in from the cold? He'd been injured.
Yeah.
Westwood was then unavailable.
That's it. No, but there was a big thing about Westwood because I think that was the day Martin O'Neill had it with him, because I'm sure he was supposed to play and he called off with the flu or something and just went, I can't play. And then he had to say to Mignolet, who had his mask on and everything, you're going to have to play. Yeah. And I think that was it for Westwood under O'Neill, I think.
And was that the famous 1-0 G last minute winner?
It was one, because we beat them twice in a row. It could have been. I can't remember which one it was.
I seem to think
got me there. Yeah.
I'm seeming to think in that game that it was either New Year's Day or Boxing Day. It was one of those. I seem to think he had an absolute blinder because we were under the cosh, and then we've broken free and grabbed it in the last minute.
Tell you what, if you listen to our memories, it's a good job we're not going back any further, isn't it? Really, to be fair, we're creaking it. And actually,
I remember the older stuff better than I remember the.
And I was just going to say as well, Kelvin, I bet you the club have got a dossier somewhere in the basement with like Kelvin Beattie on, with all the letters you've sent in, scouting over the years. Sign this player. But anyway, let's move on, because Ian, I want to talk about one of my favourite goalkeepers for Sunderland. He's 5th in your list. He's 2nd in Andrew's, and let me see, he's also 5th in Kelvin's. Tony Norman. I just thought on his day, I mean, look, again, we've talked about the moments that goalkeepers are susceptible to. Easy for me to say, but on his day, there's times when I think back about goalkeepers, I don't think I saw many days from other goalkeepers where I saw with Tony Norman where I just thought that was incredible, that what I've just seen. But I mean, he's, like I said, he's 5th on yours, and we'll come on Andrew, he's got him a bit higher. But what really stopped him from getting into that top 4?
Well, I remember when we were discussing the promotion teams, and I mentioned the fact that there was a fanzine was launched on the back of his infamous clanger against Sheffield Wednesday. And I said that was the only one I remember. But then you reminded me that of a booby made against Aston Villa when he allowed a Tony Daly shot to slip through his hands. But those mistakes notwithstanding, he, to me, would almost be the antithesis of Vito Mannone. I always felt safe with Tony Norman. I didn't with Mannone, albeit he had some very, very good days in a Sunderland shirt. Yeah, Tony Norman, I think his goalkeeping was so well honed that he didn't have to pull off spectacular saves. His positioning was invariably flawless. He was decent in the air. I can't recall him being bad at one-on-ones, and his reflexes were probably above average as well. So, yeah, as I say, if someone was marking him out 10, all different categories, I don't think there'd be too many categories he'd fall under a 7.5.
Yeah. And I mean, Andrew, we talk about him fairly regularly on This Week, and we've fully established that Tony Norman was the precursor to Neuer and bringing the ball out with his feet. But I remember there was stories at the time about basically he was joining in with the outfield players in training because he was good enough to play out. He was one of the quickest at the club, over 100 metres, if I remember rightly. And I mean, like I said, I mean, talking about performances, that one at West Ham away in the 92 Cup run sticks out as well.
Yeah, it does. He was phenomenal that night. He was phenomenal throughout the Cup run, if memory serves me well. He had a brilliant season the year before when we got relegated under Dennis Smith. I can remember some games where it was kind of, it was Tony Norman against the rest.
Well, the playoff final.
Yeah. Great example. I will admit, him being second in my list is partly sentimental. I always talk about Marco Gabbiadini being my favourite player, but Tony Norman was right up there at the time when I first started going. I fancied myself as a goalkeeper. I mean,
that lovely green strip.
Well, yeah. Well, I got that for Christmas one year, and I think they had to cut it got grafted onto my skin. I wore it that much, and I did. In the schoolyard, in my mind, I was Tony Norman.
Weren't we all, Andrew?
Well,
of that
yeah,
generation,
yeah.
weren't we all? Yeah.
Andrew, you had that strip on last week when you were doing the pod, did you not?
Kelvin, honestly, if it fit, I'd still be strutting around in it now. Just, not answering to Andrew. I think I would answer to Tony. I believed I was Tony Norman at that age.
Brilliant.
I mean, Kelvin, for you, memories of him, you've got him fifth, the same as Ian. Like we said, Andrew's got him a bit higher up, but no other goalkeeper in this list played more games. He played 227 games for the club over about 7 years. One season, I think in the cup run season, 91-92, he played 54 games. But what's your memories?
Some good to great memories of Tony Norman. He could have been a little bit. He was one of my hair's breadths ones. I probably struggled most of all to sort of place him. He could have easily surpassed one or two that are a bit higher with him. So a lot of them play. Totally agree with you. You mentioned that West Ham in the cup. I thought Chelsea as well. What a game. I was at the playoff final against Swindon. He was brilliant that day. If some of our outfield players could have matched his performance, even aspired to it that day, we might have won that game because he was absolutely brilliant that day. I really, really like this lad. The first dribbling goalkeeper. I'm glad you got that in.
Yeah,
and I used to hear stories about him as well. I'd actually forgotten about that. We used to hear lots of stories about him playing out in training, playing outfield in training, and flying past people and stuff like that, and smashing in goals and stuff like that. He seemed to like to do that against his competition. I remember an old worthy on the bus that used to go and watch the lads training at the time, telling me about that. He says, he's a bugger, that Tony Norman. He goes running out, and he says if he sees the lad that's maybe he's going to take his place, he's smashing goals past them, And I like thinking, well, if he's good enough, if he's brave enough, he's good enough, He was brave as well, when we're on. I mean, he was a complete package of a goalkeeper, wasn't he? He was. I always thought he was a brave lad coming out. With St. Mart Poom coming out at you, and that looks like, you've got a back row forward charging towards you, and you're thinking there's a little scrum off. I'm going to get absolutely munched here. Tony Norman running out at you, you might have thought, well, he's a slim. He's tall, but just a slim lad. I've probably got the beef to knock him backwards, but he was brave out of the ball. I'm not, what would the expression be? Head in a cement mix out to get the ball. He was, lots and lots of good memories of Tony Norman. I used to he stopped doing it, but when he used to come out, when they were warming up, if you were in the ground in time, if you got yourself out the pub and got into the ground and watched the lads warming up, his warm up, he used to do all sorts of really entertaining things. He'd jump up and grab the bar and monkey hang along the bar and all that.
Did he watch John Burridge once and then cut me off him?
Don't know.
Because John Burridge used to have a brilliant one where he used to do backflips and all sorts when he was warming up for
used
games,
to walk on his hands and stuff like that. Yeah. He's probably looking for his head after the playoff game.
Well, I was going. Ian, the other one with John Burridge was apparently he used to put headphones on before a game, and he used to listen to tapes. And someone took them off one day and started listening to it. It was a tape of him telling himself how good he was.
There were so many John Burridge stories. I know someone once told me that he was walking towards him in the street in Durham. And suddenly, on the hard concrete, John Burridge just out of the blue, just dived to his left. So he was mad as well as being a fanatical trainer.
Well, I was just going to say, Ian, actually, you said something about your top four. Interestingly, because you said you had Tommy Sorensen, Denmark, legend. Yeah. Craig Gordon, Scottish, brilliant, one of the best Scottish keepers. Jordan Pickford, one of the best English keepers. Shea Given, one of the best Irish keepers. If it wasn't for Neville Southall,
if it wasn't for Neville Southall, well, that's right. I mean, he was the perpetual number two. It was just like I remember at Newcastle, William McFaw was always the understudy for Pat Jennings, and as far as Sunderland were concerned, Jimmy Montgomery was around, unfortunately, at the same time as Gordon Banks and Peter Shilton was breaking through then as well.
Yeah, and Benetti, obviously.
Peter Benetti.
The 70 World Cup. I see Kelvin shaking his head. We'll move on quickly. Andrew, I wanted to talk about Anthony Patterson because you've got him third. Ian's got him lower down in sixth. Kelvin's got him at fourth in his top four. But that's a big statement to have him up there in third. But, just in terms of him breaking through, he broke through in that League One playoff final season, played 15 games, took over from Hoffman. But since then, the last 3 seasons, 50 games, 46 games, 50 games.
Yeah. It's that thing I touched upon at the start about you want to just be able to pick your goalkeeper and forget about him. Just leave him. Yeah, just leave him there. He'll do a job. He has come in for criticism a little bit this season. Not all of it, I think, was fair personally, but he's got the right mindset. If he does have a slip or concedes a slightly soft goal, it is out of his mind in seconds. I think for a young keeper to come in, he had very little experience about him, and yet he came in, like you say, Chris, you've rattled off the stats there. He's a virtual ever-present. He's got skill as a goalkeeper, but also the perfect mentality for it. And in previous conversations, I like this. It's obvious that I like this current squad. Patterson, though, for me, is one of my favourites within that group. I think he's a quality goalkeeper. I'm really hoping he steps up next season because I'd like to see him make that move into the Premier League. I think he deserves it after his last few years with us.
Yeah, and you've got him a little lower down there, and like we said, you've got that top 5 almost of international goalkeepers, Ian, and then just outside of that, that's where you've got Patterson. And are you basically saying by that he's got the potential to now kick on in the Premier League and get into that class?
Yes, I probably am. Actually, Chris, I would like to think again when we were forming our promotion sides, and 2 of you had Tri Hume, and I said I'd love to think 12 months down the line he would be in there. Very similar here. If you look, my top 5 all played top flight football. Anthony Patterson hasn't played top flight football, but I do think, Andrew, your point that you could just put your keeper there and forget about him. Now, if you contrast that to the relegation season in 2018, how many goalkeepers there? It was an issue week in, week out, and it was an issue that was never solved. The other thing about Patterson is very different in personality-wise to a keeper we'll be discussing very soon. He's almost unemotional, isn't he? When he's saved penalties, you've never really seen him fist clenching. His teammates have jumped on his back and everything, but he's quite stoic. And of course, at Wembley, he had a smile to his face. But I think that's again, it's been touched upon. It's a great quality he has. I think he's very cool. I don't think he feels the pressure too much. If there is a criticism, and I'm sure he'd agree himself, he needs to improve his kicking because it's such an important part of a goalkeeper's armoury now.
Yeah. Kelvin, you've got him in fourth, and and Ian's just talked about his character there. But during that wobble he had this season, that was surely a positive that he was kind of, he kept himself calm throughout all that.
I totally agree with Ian and Andrew about him there. I think the way that he's worked through, we call it a bad spell. I did feel he was facing the ire of some of our crowd, that some of that was unfair. But he's worked his way through that with very little fuss. I think that ability to keep your head whilst all others are losing it for a goalkeeper is really, really essential, almost, and he never looks like, he's lost his head. He never looks like he does. I don't really feel he has rushes of blood or anything like that Perez and Manoni would have. I usually feel he's just about always in the right position as well. I never feel that he gets caught out too often. For a young lad, he's learnt that craft quite quickly. You mentioned his distribution. If I was being picky, I think there are times with crosses where you're looking for him as a really big lad to come out and claim that ball, and whether there's something going on, because there's loads of variables to this, isn't there? Has one of his defenders called that? Has there been a plan beforehand? You watch it and you think that looks like the plan is he stays on his line there. Sometimes I think there are a number of variables. He's a big lad. I'd like to see him coming out and gathering some of those crosses, that probably because when we've got Luke O'Nien in there, we're a little bit vulnerable to that high ball into the centre of our box. And hey, I love Luke O'Nien, so don't read that the wrong way. I think he's a fantastic young goalkeeper. I think we'll see more of him. I think there's more to come. I hope he does that with us. He went up a little bit when I was looking for what would move him up or down, and I was starting to look on the boundaries of some of the criteria. I thought, I like that he's committed to the club. I like that it sounds like there's been a bit of interest and that he's committed to the club. So, yeah.
You mentioned interest from other clubs. He does seem committed. He must live near me, Kelvin, because I see him around quite a lot. He seems like a pretty down-to-earth lad. I think I've seen him at the college training kids, and he seems like he enjoys being here.
He doesn't live near you, Andrew. He wants your Tony Norman jersey.
That's exactly it. He heard I used to play in goal and wants a few tips. I think that's what it really is. No, he's he seems to be a nice down-to-earth lad. I think as well, something I like about him is pre-season, you always see he's doing extra training sessions and doing fitness drills and what have you. So he wants to improve. He wants to be here and do well. You can tell by the fact I've got him at number 3. I think quite a lot of them.
Well, let's move on to someone, as Ian's touched on, someone at the other end of the spectrum in terms of character. We'll move on to Jordan Pickford. And Kelvin, I just want to start off with you on this, because you've got Jordan Pickford down in 7th. Ian's got him in 3rd. Andrew's got him in 4th. And, when you look at it, you look at the stats, and we all know Jordan Pickford of what he's gone on to. But when you talk about him with Sunderland, 6 loan moves between the ages 17 and 22, ended up making 35 appearances for Sunderland. And he actually played more league games for Bradford than he did for Sunderland. Do you think what he's done since has obviously elevated him for a lot of Sunderland fans?
You can't take what he's done since away from him. He's this lad is the best English goalkeeper, isn't he? At the moment, I'm not an England fan, but you can't help but sort of
I think you've mentioned that on every single
I'll mention it again. I'll tell you.
But Calvin, could you just say that again, please? I didn't quite hear it. I don't know if it's stuck in your craw a bit, but just say that about Pickford again. What is he?
I think he is the best English keeper at the moment. you can't. I mean, I don't know. I watch him play for Everton, and I think it's great what he gets up to. But a bit like when we're talking, I'm not saying Manoni was as good as him, but the kind of things he's doing is what drew me to Manoni a bit, in the sense of being entertained by him. I love all he's winding up of the Newcastle fans and stuff like that. He's not the least bit bothered about all that dinosaur stuff that they get up to. He just straight in there. And I've got a really good friend who's a Newcastle fan, and he was saying, "Had Bugger come on the pitch and was like jumping about like a dinosaur when he came out the tunnel." And he's just winding. He's got that in his character. He's totally, I mean, It's interesting when you compare the two because they actually physically, Patterson and Pickford's kind of look quite similar in build, but they're two totally different characters, aren't they? And having said, I like what Patterson brings, that keeping his head whilst everybody else is losing theirs. You couldn't really say that about Pickford, could you? Because he's totally like revving it up and giving it laldy. So, but what a keeper! He's a really good keeper. The only thing that it took him down my list a little bit was the number of appearances. That was all it was. He's every bit as good a keeper. He's every bit as good a keeper as Tommy Sorensen, who's number one. But you know what he played? I had him down as playing 31, making 31 appearances for us all in the Premiership. Yeah.
I like that you mentioned Patterson and Pickford together there, Kelvin. Because we're talking about goalkeepers, I do think it's worth mentioning our academy has produced some fantastic goalkeepers over the years. I think Mark Prudhoe has a lot to do with that. I think both of them have learned from him. And whilst they are different in character, which you're bound to get in goalkeepers, Pickford obviously needs to be on edge, I think, to get the best out of himself. People think he's wild. I think he is actually in control of his emotions in a way. He just needs to be quite hyper to stay alert. But you've got these two different characters, and yet these are two quality goalkeepers. As Ian's mentioned there, there's every chance Patterson could go in the Premier League and become a international keeper himself. That says a lot to the club for being able to produce these types of performers.
Of course, there's Matty Young coming through at the moment as well, who's pushing Anthony. I mean, Ian, just yourself on Jordan Pickford. Look, it's staggering that when you say it out loud, when you think back to it, because it didn't seem a surprise at the time, but 35 appearances and Everton are paying 25 million for him. And I think there were other clubs after him at the time. I think there was a whole host of clubs after him. I mean, do you think actually, I think I think seeing him and watching him talk about it, I think Everton kind of suits him in some ways. But do you think he could have actually spent his career at almost a higher level, almost played Champions League football for a decade?
Well, Everton have certainly got their money's worth there, haven't they? Listen, Kelvin, I'm not an England fan either, but I'm a huge fan of Jordan Pickford. I got to know him very well during the 3 years I was covering England at the World Cup in Russia. The other press lads got me to be his unofficial interpreter, and I can remember in the media centre when he'd come and he'd make a beeline for me, asking, "Have we signed anyone yet?" And this was when he was at Everton, So, and of course, you'll all be aware of the song that Everton have devised for it. So he's a Macklem, he's a Blue, he's a Toffee through and through. He hates Newcastle, he hates the rhyming with white. Jordan Pickford's Dynamite. And I think it was first aired, was it, up to Fulham around Easter time, and you could see how much he was enjoying it. He's a character off the pitch, he's a character on the pitch. Although I think it's fair to say now that most Newcastle fans have a grudging respect for him. He had an outstanding performance in the final game of the season. I tried to catch him in the mix zone, but he'd gone by the time I'd finished my work. I think he did have a problem earlier on in his Everton career, mentality-wise. There was one game at Newcastle. He was overhyped, and he did himself no favours. He was the polar opposite of that on his last occasion, Newcastle, and the one before that.
The tackle on Van Dijk as well, I remember.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he has ironed out his game. 2-3 years ago, there was a debate whether he was the England number one. I don't think that debate is there now, although James Trafford is coming up fast on the rails. Of course, at Sunderland, he played in a losing side, didn't he?
Mm.
I haven't got the stats available. One of you might have how many clean sheets he had at Sunderland. I doubt there were very many. While I think in the last 2 seasons, clean sheets have been a specialty. He's got quite a few. Super keeper. He's made some of the most outstanding saves of recent times. I think if there was going to be a debate on the save of the season after 40 years of the Premier League, when would that be? That would be in 5 or 6 years' time. Then he will be a contender to displace Craig Gordon as the man who made the greatest save in Premier League history. I've forgotten who it was against. It was 2 years ago towards the end of the season, and won the save. So yeah, special keeper, great guy.
Yeah, but just on that point, just very quickly, Ian, do you think there's a potential he might have 1 or 2 slight regrets that, like I said, because he does have the potential to play for a top side in Europe who are challenging for huge honours and maybe European honours year after year?
Yeah, quite possibly. When you look at the great keepers, it's surprising how many of them never played for want of a better word, the elite clubs. I mean, Gordon Banks, Peter Shilton. Yes, he went on to win the title and win the European Cup with Forest, but they weren't an elite club, were they? So, he certainly seems happy. Everton, I think, suits him. Will he go on to a move now? Well, I think if he was going to move, it might have been before now. I suspect with Everton moving into the stadium, they will become a top half Premier League team again.
I wonder if he sees the fact that he's England number one as his big achievement. He maybe can't be that if he's at another club. Being at Everton allows him to do that, and he takes a lot of pride playing for England. To be honest, Pickford is probably the only person that's kept me interested in England in the last couple of years, and he's certainly the only player who I'm bothered about in terms of Premier League. Since Sunderland got relegated from the Premier League, I barely followed it. But obviously, now we're back there, I'll pay more attention. But in these last few years, if Pickford's on Match of the Day, I'll pay attention. But other than that, I don't bother.
Honestly, if it's no major tournament, I forget England's playing. But anyway, let's go on to our top spot, which was absolutely unanimous. Thomas Sorensen. He was the only one who you all had in the same spot. Everyone else except Lionel Perez, who had 2 10th place finishes and a 9th place finish, had a spread of at least 3 positions, I think. 197 appearances. Only Tony Norman's played more from our 10. I think he was actually signed for a similar fee to Tony Norman, which is crazy. I think he was only arrived when he was about 21. He was in the shadow of Peter Schmeichel. I think he was actually recommended by Peter Schmeichel at the time. He ended up with, I think it was 101 caps for Denmark. Ian, I mean, was it even close that he wasn't, that he was your number one?
Not really. One word springs to mind when I think of Thomas Sorensen: presence. He commanded his box. He had a big, imposing frame. He was a great communicator as well. I don't know if you remember, but he had a good, strong relationship with his back four. And yeah, I mean, he signed in the same week that Kieran Dyer signed for Newcastle, funny enough. I remember going to the press conference at the Stadium of Light, and I think it was in late June 1998. And I remember how thrilled Peter Reid was to get him, because as we've mentioned earlier, Peter Reid was looking to replace Perez after the playoff final. But I can remember the confidence of Thomas Sorensen. He was a young lad at the time, but he actually talked about wanting to emulate his hero, Peter Schmeichel. And he almost did, didn't he? He was his understudy for a while. Then he became the unequivocal number one of Denmark. And again, when you can't recall too many clangers, certainly not at Sunderland, although there was an infamous one in the second city derby for Aston Villa, wasn't there, after he'd left Weir's side. But yeah, it was just this wonderful presence that he had. I can't recall too many spectacular saves, but I think he was one of those keepers, a bit like Tony Norman, in that his positioning was so good, he didn't always have to make spectacular saves.
Yeah. I mean, Andrew, just looking at his stats for his games that he played, won the title, he played 56 games that season. Then 2 seventh place finishes, played 39, then 42, then 35 games when we finished 17th, and another 25 the season after before he left. I mean, he was always number one. And Ian's we talked about big moments from some of these keepers. And the obvious one that sticks out by a country mile for Thomas Sorensen is that penalty save, isn't it?
It was all right. It was all right, wasn't it?
I don't know if you remember it or not, Andrew. I thought
vague recollections. I think he had a decent penalty record, and you've gone through the games he's played there. Thomas Sorensen is the only one from this list who was a regular, consistent number one for a Sunderland team who were finishing in the top half of the top flight. For all of the pluses and minuses of the other goalkeepers, he was the one that Reid didn't build a team round, but he was integral to Reid's best days as a Sunderland manager. I've got to be honest, I never warmed to him on a personal level. He had this annoying habit of whenever we conceded, he'd be up and he'd be pointing his finger at the defenders, and having a right go. I didn't like to see that, but that was possibly a good thing. You perhaps needed that as a goalkeeper. Schmeichel did the same.
It was either that or Bruce Grobbelaar and giving them a slap, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, he never. I don't think he ever threw any daftins. So yeah, maybe that's a little bit better. But I never quite liked that aspect of him. But other than that, just a brilliant goalkeeper. And
Pickford's a little bit like that as well, isn't he? Though
he can be, but Jordan Pickford's one of our own, Ian. So I'll let him off with that. You're very fair in all honesty, but that was just something that I remembered about Sorensen, which is a shame because other than that, he was just the perfect goalkeeper for us.
Well, interesting, Kelvin. I mean, listening to them, we're talking about the big save for the penalty, but actually, and I'm thinking back, a lot of these keepers, I've mentioned moments, I've mentioned games. With Thomas Sorensen, it was one of these things where he never seemed to need to make a spectacular save. He just saved things.
Yeah, I think Ian called that right. He's always the reason why he's number one for me out of that 10 is his positioning. His concentration. He was like the Iceman for me. The only time I think Andrew is right. The only time I would see him a little bit fiery would be after he'd conceded a goal, and I can certainly recall him giving out to defenders, from his touchline after the goal going in.
I was like that.
I guess I'm pretty neutral on it. There's something to be said for it, and there's other times you've got goalkeepers doing that where you're thinking you want to be having a word with yourself there, but I never felt that about him. I thought his positioning, he's a calm and presence. He had a bit of everything, didn't he? He that you want in a goalkeeper. I quite like these. He sort of, this Iceman, I used that term before, he was just a little bit like who we were talking about before, Patterson, this sort of not losing his head.
Does that make Jordan Pickford Maverick, does it?
It was just one of the things that he had a good, you mentioned his penalty record. I think I did look at that when there was never any doubt Sorensen was going to be at the top of my list, but I thought I better back this up, and make sure, just because I wasn't sure what Andrew was going to going to be coming out with, I needed backup for my choices. So he saved 4 out of 16 penalties that he faced with us. That Shearer penalty, he saved 3 out of the 9 shootout penalties that he saved as well. So he'd a bit of that's a canny ratio. Yeah, he's a great golfer as well, I'm told, but I don't know why that would move him up or down my list at all. But I'm told he was a cracking golfer with the potential to have been a professional golfer. But I think that might just be he's international record as well. I mean, he did take over from a Danish icon, didn't he? In 31 cap he got with Denmark as a Sunderland player, So you're looking at you are talking about there a really, really top goalkeeper in goals for us.
It's amazing how he's sandwiched in between the two Schmeichels, isn't he? And it's amazing. A third of his caps. So he got 2/3 of his caps, not at Sunderland, Andrew.
Yeah. Just on him being sandwiched between the two Schmeichels, I heard a different podcast. Am I allowed to say I listen to other podcasts, Chris, or is that going to?
Absolutely.
Apparently, his nickname in Denmark was the Bridge, because he bridged the gap between the two Schmeichels. I'm just looking.
I think that was on this podcast.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned that. Yeah,
Ian said that.
I mentioned it was a Danish journalist told me once when I was over in Dublin covering a.
So I didn't need to admit. I didn't need to admit to listening to rival podcasts.
Everything said.
Credibility
shot there.
I've shot myself in the foot. I think what's interesting for me is I went with Perez at number 10 and Sorensen at number 1, and it was Sorensen that replaced Perez in the team. And the big difference between the playoff season under Peter Reid and the promotion season, the one after, was the number of clean sheets we got. Yeah, it was 20 odd for Sorensen. I know Marriott kept a clean sheet when he came in for a game. I think that was the record for most clean sheets in a single season for Sunderland. And that was the difference that turned this entertaining side that maybe won a few games 3-2, 4-3, but then lost a couple, to then this machine that went on and won 105 points and were just unstoppable, really.
It's strange, if we were doing a podcast of Sunderland's top 10 best signings, Sorensen, I'm sure would figure, but 12 months later...
I'm just going to write that down here.
12 months later, Sunderland signed another Dane who could quite possibly feature in the worst ever signings, Carsten Fredgaard. And I can remember people were saying, he was seen as a replacement for Alan Johnson, wasn't he? And people were saying, well, if he's going to be half as good as the last Dane we signed, then this is going to be a good signing. He just never figured. Peter Reid took an instant dislike to him.
Yeah, and he arrived with the nickname of Lightning, and he left with a nickname of Chocolate Fireguard.
That's right.
But yeah, I mean, just quickly Ian, on that penalty, but that Shearer penalty, because Shearer's trademark penalty, and the big one I'm thinking about is the Switzerland one on the opening day of Euro '96, was hooked into the top left. Now, and this one with Sorensen,
it was strange. It was a most un-Shearer-esque penalty, because Alan Shearer always said, that he said, put it this way: when I take a penalty, if the goalkeeper gets the right way, I'm going to make sure it's too hard for him to save. Yeah. And Alan Shearer very, very rarely did penalties low to the keeper's left, and it was a pretty weak penalty. I know. I think Alan Shearer speaks openly that it was the worst moment of his playing career, certainly.
Yeah. And you could say that kind of afterwards, but it's interesting because if you were Thomas Sorensen and all the goalkeepers put the instructions on water bottles and things like this, he would have been going to his top right immediately.
Probably. I don't think he was ever asked, why did you decide to go low down to the left? Yeah.
But it's just one of those moments, isn't it? And because as soon as I think Newcastle fans and Sunderland fans, when the penalty was given, I'm sure it was a Niall Quinn horror show.
It was a dread. Quinn had just scored a wonderful headed goal, and then he made the most agricultural tackle. I mean, what on earth he was doing there in the first place? No one knows, but he was. There was redemption at hand for him.
But it is interesting. Like I said, it's funny because we're trying to gauge these keepers, but for a lot of them, I can remember individual games. But Thomas Sorensen, other than that Newcastle moment, there's not really one that sticks out where I think, yeah, he kept us in that game. And I wonder if it was just that side he played in, because as you touched on, Andrew, he probably played in, out of all of them, he probably played in the best Sunderland side.
Yeah, I honestly believe that. But again, though, you don't get picked for that best Sunderland side unless you're contributing to it. So it wasn't a case of luck that he was behind a strong defence. He contributed to it a lot.
Yeah, and especially under Peter Reid, Ian, because he was the type where if you just put one foot out and your face didn't fit a little bit, you were out.
Well, his face, he was synonymous with that side. As you say, I think Peter Reid had liked him, had great faith in him, and he wasn't the type of character who was going to kick up a fuss, was he?
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, well, yes, he was the unanimous choice for the top spot. So let's look at all the averages, because, of course, I'm sad enough to work all of that out of the three choices from the three experienced gentlemen we have. So let's go through their top 10 when we work out the averages. So at 10 is Lionel Perez. Then we've got Vito Minone at 9th. We've got Mark Poom at 8th. We've actually got in 6th and 7th, Shea Given and Simon Mignolet equal at 6th and 7th, but Mignolet just nudges it because he gets the highest pick, which Calvin picked. Then we've got Jordan Pickford in 5th. We've got Anthony Patterson in 4th. And we actually had a tie between Craig Gordon and Tony Norman in 2nd and 3rd. And they had the best top choice, which was 2nd. But I think Craig Gordon had the lowest position, which was 7th. So Craig Gordon is in 3rd and Tony Norman is in 2nd. And as I said, the unanimous top spot is Thomas Sorensen. So please get in touch with us, because I'm absolutely certain you disagree, and you've been screaming all the way through that we've either forgot someone or, that so-and-so is better than so-and-so, and we guarantee that you're going to have different views to us, but it's all good fun. And I just want to say thank you very much, Andrew.
Thank you. I enjoyed that. It was a good one. That I enjoyed chatting with all three of you gents and trying to see if we had any common ground.
Yeah, I'm sure you enjoyed it. There was no Lee Johnson moment in this one, so it's all good, mate.
Right. And Chris, if you want us to keep coming doing these, I'm going to have to limit you to maybe one Lee Johnson jibe every episode.
Okay.
My good character is being torn apart here.
Maligned.
Yeah.
And thank you very much, Calvin. Speak to you soon on this week, mate.
Yeah, you're all wrong about Mignolet, by the way, but thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and this debate will rumble on. And thank you very much, Ian, for joining us. But it's been an absolute pleasure as always.
Well, when you're looking at the great pantheon of North East football, and it's a very general statement, this, but I think you'd say historically Newcastle had the strikers, Borough arguably had the midfielders, but goalkeeping and centre half have been the positions that Sunderland have always excelled in, and so it was a tough pick, but I suspect many people over 65, 70 years old, they would still swear by Jimmy Montgomery, wouldn't they?
Yeah, that's it. Oh, I think it's a Sunderland crowd. I think the biggest roars are usually for the tackles and a keeper cleaning people out, I think, more than a goal sometimes. But yeah, as I said, this debate's going to rumble on. So thanks again, everyone, for listening. Please get in touch. It's all good fun, and we'd like to hear everybody's view on it. Everything will be on the Roker Report website, and of course we're going to have daily releases on How We're the Podcast. We've got loads coming up, but from us, it's bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.